Hello everyone, Giltar here with an action figure review. This review was requested by YouTube user CocoRain123. I do apologize for the lateness in getting this review up and running, but here we are, and I hope you enjoy it. This time we're looking at Kaiyodo's Revoltech Yamaguchi EVA-02 production model, and this is the 1997 movie version as opposed to the television show anime version. This is the 27th Revoltech action figure produced. It was released in May of 2007 and retails for 1,900 yen, or between $20 to $21 American. Now, the reason why I have this extra action figure in frame is that, just simply to explain, I won't be going through a full demonstration of the articulation of the EVA Unit 2. I've already done it for the EVA Unit 3 here in a previous review, and I'm going to actually just show 2 points of difference in articulation. The first being the wrists of these figures. The EVA Unit 3 uses a ball joint peg system which allows rotation and swivel. However, the EVA Unit 2 only uses a simple straight peg connection which only allows rotation. It doesn't allow swiveling or additional points of articulation. So that is one difference. Another point of difference is that the neck designs are different. The EVA Unit 3 has a 2-point articulation neck design, so it allows you to bend at the bottom and upper points of the neck for some really interesting ranges of, I guess, flexibility. I can also rotate. However, the EVA Unit 2 here only has a single revolver joint, so it can look up and down, but only at a single point of articulation, and it can also rotate there. So those are the 2 points of difference between the articulation of these two action figures. I will point out some other sort of basic articulation points of the figure as well, though. So we have revolver joints at the ankle and at the knee as well. We have a cut upper thigh leg design, and also cut at the hip to allow forward and back movement. So you have a combination of rotation, full rotation, and some forward and back movement. Now, I like actually this design because I find that even though ball joint hip connections are very nice for articulation, they do kind of get in the way of the visual appearance. It is kind of obtrusive to have a huge ball joint at the hip area. So I don't actually mind these cut legs or cut sort of upper hip thigh designs, because they do, for the most part, maintain visual integrity and still offer a good range of articulation, because as you can see, you have really interesting choices for posing. Now on to the next point of articulation. We got a revolver joint at the sort of mid-torso, so it allows rotation and bending. And as you can hear again, it's a revolver joint, so you have a ratcheting component. We have revolver joints for the elbows and the shoulders, and finally swivel joints for these shoulder fin parts. And that pretty much does it for articulation. It's a really good articulation, I think. I really like Revoltech action figures for their points of articulation and the revolver joint technology. I really like the combination of peg, ball, and ratchet joints. Now let's move on to accessories. First will be, well, obviously this huge double-bladed sword. I really like the look of it. It's not too intricate, but it has a really nice, sleek design, and it's quite intimidating. The second weapon accessory is the progressive knife here. It's a nicely detailed accessory. Nothing much to say about it aside from it's a nice looking knife, I guess. It's followed up by these 2 replacement parts for the shoulder fins. This one has the shoulder fin opening to reveal a progressive knife handle, and this one I think just opens at the top to reveal, I think, a missile pod. Now, the one issue I have with these parts are that they are quite large or thick compared to the standard shoulder part, which is very thin. When you have it replaced, it's obtrusive. It just kind of it's a big chunk of plastic on the top of the shoulder fin, and you can just swap them out by removing it. And it has 2 sort of pegs at the top, and you just peg this back on. Which is not supposed to be this difficult. Oh, there we go. And as you can see, if you look at the front, I mean, it sits on top like a big hunk of plastic, so I'm not a big fan of that implementation of the accessory. I wish it was done in a more non-obtrusive way, but it's a nice effect still. You get an extra shoulder, or a pair of shoulder accessories, so that's not so bad. The action figure also comes with a display stand. Pretty traditional. It has a V shape for the base. It has a peg here which you can use for the soles of the feet. They have circular ports which you can just peg it onto the stand for increased standing stability. And you also have an arm here with a revolver joint at the end to basically suspend the action figure. And where you plug the revolver joint into is the back of the EVA Unit 2. There's a circular port there. Alternatively, you can use another accessory. It's this entry plug power cord accessory, which you can also plug in. And finally, we have a few pairs of hands or fists. The first pair of fists actually are sort of molded closed fists that come attached to the action figure. Then you have a pair of trigger finger hands or grip fists. And then a pair of these sort of open hands. I have one attached to its left hand, and this other one is not attached to anything. And finally, you have an open sort of grip hand for the large double-bladed sword. So you have quite a few hands to choose from. They're all quite nice, though they are a bit, and I don't know if you can make it out on my camera, but they are lacking in terms of sculpted detail. They just don't look as good as later action figures from the Revoltech line. But it's hard to hold. They're kind of small, but yeah, they don't have great detail molded into them. And that's pretty much it for the accessories. So let's move on to the pros and cons. And I would say I'll start off with my cons as I normally do. Let's see. I've got two cons really, and they're kind of related. The first con would be just the way that the hand or wrist joints are just straight pegs, and they just allow rotation for articulation. I'm not a big fan of that. I think Kaiyodo could have stuck with the ball peg joint connection that they used for the other Revoltech action figures. They would have maintained joint strength, there's no problems there, but also increased the range of articulation. Though that being said, it doesn't limit or hinder it too much. We still have some interesting poses capable through the hands. Another con would be some molding issues. And first of all, like I mentioned before, the hands, just the molding seems a little sloppy, not very fine detail for what they are. Another thing is just the sort of molding for these large shoulder components. They're just way too thick for the relatively thin shoulder fin components. And finally, another problem related to the molding is just that the ports, I had to actually carve out chunks of plastic from the ports because there was excess material right out of the package. So I had to use my hobby knife here and just carve out these peg holes to allow them to fit onto the pegs properly, because otherwise there's just too much material in the way. So I don't know what happened, but granted, it is one of the early generation Revoltech action figures, so I do notice that with the earlier Revoltech action figures, there's a lot of issues with pegs not fitting properly into ports. So, I mean, there we go. Now, those are the cons. I'll move on to the pros then. I'll start off by first saying these are really highly posable action figures. They have a lot of range of articulation, multiple points of articulation, and as you can see, you can strike some very interesting poses. They are tricky at first to sort of get to know, but once you learn the ins and outs of a basic Revoltech action figure, you can really pose them quite well. It only took me like half a minute to get the Evangelion posed in such a way. It doesn't take long to get these action figures into nice stances for display. Another thing I like about the EVA Unit 2 is just the design, the aesthetics of the EVA units in general. I think that if you're a fan of Evangelion, you're going to love this action figure. It looks striking, it looks fairly accurate, and it's just a great addition to any Evangelion's fans' action figure collection. Added to the posability that you get from all the points of articulation, it's just a really fun action figure to have. The accessories are pretty good too. You get a whole bunch of different hands, you get the shoulder attachments, and despite their sort of kind of cumbersome sculpting, they still look okay, and they do spice up your display potential. I always welcome the action or display stands rather that come with them, because they increase the ability to pose these guys in very interesting ways. And finally, I think that to be honest, it's a good action figure if you're not a fan of Evangelion. That's a good action figure, and the revolver joints really help in making it so. However, I wouldn't say it's a must-get. The only way that you must get this action figure is if you're a big Neon Genesis Evangelion fan, and at that point, with your fandom behind you, I actually would say don't hesitate in buying this. It's a pretty good looking Revoltech figure. Again, despite the few flaws in it, I think you can really overlook them, especially if you're a fan of the series of this anime. And I think it's just a really striking figure that will really fit in well with your Evangelion collection. So I would say if you're not a fan of Evangelion, consider this figure, but don't rush out to buy it. There are other better versions of this figure in both action figure and model kit format. However, if you are an Evangelion fan, then I would say, yeah, definitely strongly consider buying this, because it's a nice action figure with a lot of good points and a few bad points. So I hope you guys enjoyed my review, and well, thank you for watching. See you guys next time.